Good morning. I am truly honoured to participate in today's launch and very sorry not to be able to do so in person. And although my comments are indeed pre-recorded and made remotely, with my thanks to WHO for use of their studio, they are nonetheless heartfelt. We all deeply appreciate DFID's hosting of this event and are extremely grateful for the profile that this will give to the life-saving issues that you will consider today. My particular congratulations go to the Interagency Working Group on Reproductive Health in Crisis for their outstanding work and for the wonderful partnership that they represent, and specifically for the report being launched. 60 million people are living in displacement in the world today, forced to flee their homes because of the violence, conflict, and human rights violations. Another 22 million people are displaced by natural disasters. The majority of those are women, young people, and children, and their numbers are increasing. To do well, to do better, and to do more, we have to learn fast, which is why the IWAG Global Evaluation matters so much. Its findings are confronting enough even before one has considered what this last year has added. That still women, girls, and families endure an ever-worsening Syrian crisis, spreading further and deeper into its neighbours. Yemen has since descended into armed conflict. Drought now looms over war-torn South Sudan, the world's newest country. The outbreak of Ebola in West Africa has cost thousands of lives, derailing communities' futures, leaving collapsed health infrastructure in its wake. A typhoon has since wreaked havoc in Vanuatu, and an earthquake has struck Nepal, levelling entire communities. The desperation of those displaced drives them into perilous journeys across the Mediterranean Sea. Ukraine, northern Nigeria, Gaza, Afghanistan, Myanmar. Humanitarian crises are a stark and indelible feature of the world's development landscape. It is in these settings that 60% of preventable maternal mortality and 53% of preventable under-5 mortality occurs. Newborns are at a highest risk of mortality in these circumstances. While for adolescents, the impact of disasters are compounded by their increased exposure to sexual and gender-based violence and the consequences of their reduced access to sexual and reproductive health services, support, and information. The noble and necessary aspirations of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Secretary-General's Every Woman, Every Child renewed global strategy will not be achieved if the human rights to health and well-being of these hardest-to-reach populations are not given greater priority. If the realities of people's lives in humanitarian and fragile settings are not fully embedded across programs, humanitarian and development, where multi-hazard risk assessment and investments in individual and community resilience could mitigate the impact of crisis on women, girls, children, and newborns. We will fail them, and we will fail ourselves. And for that, we will all pay a heavy price. IWAG's global evaluation gives us the hard facts and tells us where and how to step up. The human toll of these identified gaps in our work must not be hidden by statistics, logistics, and commodities, but rather illuminated. We need to reach and be accountable to people. We must touch and transform human lives even in the hardest of circumstances and at the toughest of times. Governments and donors must be made to understand the impact and feel the urgency, particularly at a time of shrinking economies when policy shifts turn traditional donors away from aid and political intervention. Women dying from preventable causes in pregnancy and childbirth is unjust and unacceptable. The often uncounted millions of girls and women who survive, but for want of appropriate care, are left with permanent injury extracts a price no country can afford. We need their talent, contribution, and dignity to be preserved, not eroded, and for this they need our urgent and sustained commitment and action. It is my particular honor to lead the Humanitarian Workstream of the Secretary-General's new global strategy for Every Woman, Every Child. The IWAG is a valued, indeed invaluable, partner in this work, and we are finding that the development and humanitarian divide are impeding rather than enabling our effectiveness for every woman, every child, everywhere. Current funding models do not lead to sustained, dedicated, predictable funding streams, while national planning systems do not make allowances for the impacts of the disasters that may lie ahead. We must change thereby enabling dramatic and sustainable change in millions of lives for the benefit of millions more. As this evaluation shows, it all begins with the rights and needs of women, children, and adolescents living in crisis situations, some of them for their entire lives. They must be front and center of national and international planning, programming, and funding. And IWAG is helping to show us the way. Thank you very much.